History remembers Rome as one of the greatest empires ever built. It ruled millions of people, commanded the most disciplined armies of the ancient world, and left behind roads, laws, architecture, and ideas that continue to influence our lives even today. At its height, Rome stretched from the misty hills of Britain to the scorching deserts of North Africa, and from the Atlantic Ocean to the borders of the Middle East. To those who lived under its banner, Rome seemed eternal, too powerful, too wealthy, and too organized to ever disappear. Yet every empire, no matter how mighty, begins with something small. Long before emperors wore golden crowns, before the Colosseum echoed with the roar of thousands, and before Roman legions marched beneath their famous eagle standards, there was no empire at all. There were no marble temples, there was only a quiet landscape of forests, rivers, hills, and scattered villages where ordinary people struggled to survive. Nothing about this forgotten corner of central Italy suggested that it would one day become the center of the ancient world. The story of Rome is not simply the story of military conquest or political power. It is the story of how geography, determination, opportunity, and centuries of ambition transformed an insignificant settlement into a civilization that would change human history forever. But before Rome could conquer the world, it first had to be born.
A land before Rome. To understand the birth of Rome, we must travel back nearly 28 centuries to the Italian peninsula of the 8th century BC. The landscape was vastly different from the Italy we know today. There were no unified kingdoms, no national borders, and no single ruler controlling the peninsula. Instead, the region was divided among dozens of tribes and cultures, each speaking its own dialect, following its own customs, and competing for land and resources. Life was difficult for nearly everyone. Most families survived by farming small plots of land, raising animals, and relying on the changing seasons. A poor harvest could mean starvation. A harsh winter could destroy entire communities. Raids from neighboring tribes were common, and conflict over fertile land was an unavoidable part of life. In this world, survival depended not only on hard work, but also on strength, alliances, and the ability to adapt. Despite these hardships, Italy possessed one remarkable advantage. Located in the very heart of the Mediterranean, the peninsula stood between the civilizations of Europe, Africa, and the Near East. Although the people living there could not yet realize it, this strategic position would eventually become one of Rome's greatest strengths. Trade, culture, technology, and ideas would all pass through this region, creating opportunities unlike anywhere else in the ancient world. The peoples of ancient Italy. Long before Rome appeared, Italy was already home to several remarkable civilizations. In the north lived the Etruscans, one of the most advanced peoples in ancient Europe. Their cities were well planned, their craftsmen produced beautiful works of bronze and gold, and their engineers possessed knowledge that far exceeded that of many neighboring tribes. They built roads, temples, drainage systems, and fortified settlements, creating a sophisticated society that would later have a profound influence on early Rome. To the south, along the coastline, Greek settlers established prosperous colonies. These cities became centers of trade, philosophy, science, architecture, and art. They introduced new technologies, writing systems, and cultural traditions that spread across southern Italy. Many historians believe that without Greek influence, Roman civilization would have developed very differently. Between these powerful neighbors lived numerous Latin tribes. Unlike the wealthy Etruscans or the cultured Greeks, these communities were relatively small and modest. They farmed the land, raised livestock, and lived in simple villages built from wood, mud, and straw. Their lives were humble, but they possessed qualities that would later define Roman civilization: resilience, discipline, and a willingness to adapt to changing circumstances. In this world stood one tiny community that attracted almost no attention from the surrounding world. Its name was Rome.
The Seven Hills. At first glance, Rome seemed like an unlikely place for a great city. It was neither the richest settlement nor the most powerful.
It possessed no enormous temples, no royal palace, and no impressive monuments. Instead, it consisted of small groups of wooden huts scattered across 7 hills overlooking the Tiber River. Yet, what appeared ordinary was, in reality, an extraordinary location. The 7 hills provided natural defensive positions, making it difficult for enemies to launch surprise attacks. From their elevated viewpoints, inhabitants could observe approaching travelers and invading forces long before they reached the settlement. Between the hills lay fertile valleys suitable for farming, while nearby forests supplied timber, wildlife, and essential building materials. Most importantly, the Tiber River flowed directly beside the settlement. Although smaller than famous rivers such as the Nile or the Euphrates, the Tiber served as a vital transportation route connecting inland communities with the Mediterranean Sea. Merchants traveling across Italy often crossed the river at this location, turning the settlement into a natural meeting point for trade. Goods, people, and ideas passed through the region, quietly laying the foundation for future prosperity. History often rewards those who occupy the right place at the right time. The people living beside the Tiber could not have imagined it, but geography had already given them one of the greatest advantages any civilization could possess: a village that dreamed of nothing. The people who lived in early Rome were not kings or conquerors. They were farmers, shepherds, craftsmen, and families trying to survive another season. Their homes were small circular huts with roofs made from straw and reeds. Their tools were simple, their clothing practical, and their daily routines centered around agriculture, livestock, and community life. Every member of the family contributed to daily life, whether by tending animals, gathering firewood, repairing homes, or working the fields. There was little room for luxury, and even less for ambition beyond the needs of the village. If an outsider had visited this settlement in the 8th century BC, nothing would have suggested that it was destined for greatness. It looked no different from countless other villages scattered across Italy. No prophecy carved in stone announced its future, no traveler recorded its importance. To the rest of the ancient world, Rome simply did not matter. And yet, history has a remarkable habit of beginning in places that appear completely ordinary. Some of humanity's greatest civilizations did not emerge from the richest kingdoms or the largest cities. They began with small communities that possessed something far more valuable than wealth: the ability to seize opportunity when it appeared. Rome was about to become one of those communities. History often begins with facts, but civilizations are remembered through stories. Every great empire has a founding legend, a tale passed down through generations to explain not only where a nation came from, but also what it believed about itself. For the Romans, their story was far more than a simple account of how a city was built. It was a tale of betrayal, divine destiny, survival against impossible odds, and the birth of a people who believed they had been chosen to rule the world. And much of what we know comes from Roman writers who recorded these traditions centuries after the events were said to have taken place. Yet, regardless of its historical accuracy, the legend shaped Roman identity for over 1,000 years. To understand Rome, we must first understand the story that Romans themselves believed about their origins. The legend begins in the ancient city of Alba Longa, a settlement located southeast of the future city of Rome. According to Roman tradition, Alba Longa had been founded generations earlier by descendants of the Trojan hero Aeneas, who was said to have escaped the destruction of Troy and eventually settled in Italy. Whether Aeneas truly existed remains uncertain, but for the Romans, linking themselves to the heroes of Troy gave their civilization a noble and heroic ancestry. At the time, Alba Longa was ruled by King Numitor, a respected leader whose reign was cut short not by foreign invasion, but by betrayal from within his own family. His younger brother, Amulius, desired power above all else. Rather than waiting to inherit the throne, he seized it by force. Numitor was removed from power, his sons were reportedly killed, and every possible rival was eliminated. Only one member of Numitor's family remained capable of continuing the royal bloodline: his daughter, Rhea Silvia. Amulius understood that as long as Rhea Silvia could have children, his own rule would never be secure. To prevent any future heirs from being born, he forced her to become a Vestal Virgin, a priestess dedicated to the sacred fire of the goddess Vesta. The role demanded absolute chastity, meaning she was forbidden to marry or bear children. It was a political decision disguised as a religious one, carefully designed to erase an entire royal family from history. For a time, Amulius believed his plan had succeeded. Then, everything changed. According to Roman legend, Rhea Silvia claimed that she had been visited by Mars, the god of war. Soon afterward, she gave birth to twin boys. Their names were Romulus and Remus. Whether the story of Mars was meant to be taken literally or served as a symbolic way of giving Rome a divine origin is impossible to know. Ancient civilizations often connected their rulers to gods in order to strengthen political legitimacy. By claiming descent from Mars, the Romans were not simply telling a myth, they were explaining why they believed courage, discipline, and warfare were central to their national character. To Amulius, however, none of this mattered. All he saw were two infants whose existence threatened his stolen throne. Fear has driven countless rulers throughout history to commit terrible acts, and Amulius was no exception. Rather than risk allowing the twins to grow into future challengers, he ordered that both children be killed immediately. It was a brutal command, but in the ancient world, eliminating rivals was often considered the safest path to preserving power. Across history, kings, emperors, and dictators have repeatedly chosen violence over uncertainty. Amulius believed that by ending the lives of two helpless infants, he was protecting his kingdom. Instead, he was setting history into motion. The task of carrying out the execution fell to one of the king's servants. Yet, standing before two newborn children, man hesitated. Ancient sources describe different versions of what happened next. Some suggest he pitied the babies. Others imply he feared angering the gods by murdering innocent lives. Whatever his reason, he made a decision that would echo through history. Rather than killing the twins, he placed them inside a small wooden basket and carried them to the swollen waters of the Tiber River. Heavy rains had caused the river to overflow its banks, transforming the gentle waterway into a dangerous current capable of sweeping away trees, animals, and anything else caught in its path. The servant gently lowered the basket into the river. As the current carried the twins away, he could only watch. From his perspective, nature would finish the task he could not bring himself to complete. The basket drifted downstream, rising and falling with the rushing water. Around it floated broken branches and debris carried by the flood. At any moment, the fragile vessel could have overturned, ending the lives of the infants forever. Yet, according to the legend, fate had chosen another ending. As the floodwaters slowly receded, the basket came to rest near the foot of the Palatine Hill, one of the 7 hills that would one day form the heart of Rome. The twins had escaped death once again. Neither Amulius nor anyone else could have imagined that these abandoned children would one day become the center of one of history's greatest legends. The story could have ended there. Lost in the floodwaters of the Tiber River, the basket carrying the twins should have disappeared forever. Nature had every reason to claim their lives. The river was unpredictable, the wilderness was unforgiving, and newborn infants had almost no chance of surviving alone. Yet this is the moment where the legend of Rome takes its most extraordinary turn, a moment that would become one of the most recognizable images in world history. As the waters retreated, the basket became lodged near the roots of a wild fig tree at the foot of the Palatine Hill. The crying of the infants echoed through the quiet countryside. According to Roman tradition, those cries attracted an unexpected visitor, not a shepherd, not a passing traveler, but a female wolf. The animal approached the basket cautiously. Instead of attacking the helpless children, the she-wolf lay beside them and allowed the twins to nurse from her. In later Roman art, coins, sculptures, and monuments, this single image became the ultimate symbol of Rome's origins. 2 abandoned infants, sheltered beneath a wolf, watched over not by kings or soldiers, but by the wild itself. To the Romans, this was far more than a miracle. It was proof that the gods had chosen the twins for a greater purpose. If even the creatures of nature protected them, then perhaps their destiny had already been written. Modern historians, however, offer another fascinating possibility. In Latin, the word lupa means she-wolf, but in everyday Roman slang, it could also refer to a prostitute.
Some scholars believe that the famous story may have evolved from a misunderstanding or symbolic interpretation over many generations. It is possible that the twins were cared for by a woman who later became associated with the term lupa, and over time, the story transformed into the legend of an actual wolf. Others argue that the wolf was always intended as a sacred symbol connected with Mars, the Roman god of war, representing courage, endurance, and survival. No one can say with certainty which explanation is correct. What matters is that the legend endured because it expressed something deeper than historical fact. It told the Romans that their civilization had survived impossible odds from the very beginning. Not long after the wolf's appearance, another figure entered the story. A shepherd named Faustulus discovered the twins near the riverbank. Whether he saw the wolf himself or simply found the abandoned children depends on which ancient source one follows, but every version agrees on one point. Instead of reporting the infants to the king, Faustulus carried them home. His wife, Acca Laurentia, welcomed the children as if they were their own. Living a simple life among shepherds, the couple raised Romulus and Remus far from the dangers of royal politics. The boys grew up without knowing their true identity. They believed they were ordinary children born into an ordinary family. Their childhood was unlike that of princes raised behind palace walls. The hills surrounding the Tiber became their playground, their school, and eventually their training ground. They learned to herd livestock across rough terrain, hunt wild animals in dense forests, and defend themselves against thieves who frequently targeted shepherds and their flocks. These were not easy years, but they forged something far more valuable than comfort. They built strength, discipline, endurance, and above all, leadership. As the twins entered adulthood, their personalities began to reveal important differences. Romulus possessed quiet confidence. He thought carefully before acting, preferred planning over impulse, and naturally attracted followers who respected his judgment. Even in difficult situations, he displayed the patience expected of someone destined to lead. Remus, on the other hand, was fearless and impulsive. He enjoyed taking risks and rarely hesitated to challenge authority. Friends admired his courage, while enemies often underestimated his determination. If Romulus represented discipline, Remus embodied raw bravery. Together, they became well known among the surrounding communities. Ancient traditions describe the brothers leading groups of shepherds to recover stolen livestock, confronting bandits who terrorized the countryside, and protecting weaker villages from attacks. Whether every story is true is impossible to verify, but these accounts reveal how later Romans imagined the character of their founders. They were not raised as privileged nobles. They earned respect through action. Yet destiny has a strange way of revealing itself.
During one confrontation with local raiders, Remus was captured and taken before the authorities of Alba Longa. It was there that whispers about his remarkable appearance and unusual background began to spread. Meanwhile, Faustulus, who had long kept the secret of the twins' rescue, finally realized that the truth could no longer remain hidden. For years, he had protected the brothers from the dangers of their past. Now their past was coming to find them. The revelation that followed would change everything. Romulus and Remus were not shepherds by birth. They were the grandsons of a king, and the man sitting on the throne of Alba Longa was not their rightful ruler. He was the man who had ordered their deaths. The brothers had spent their entire lives believing they were ordinary men. In a single moment, they discovered they were heirs to a stolen kingdom. The quiet life they had always known was over. Ahead of them lay a decision that would shape history itself. Would they ignore their heritage and return to the peaceful life of shepherds? Or would they challenge a king, reclaim their family's honor, and begin the chain of events that would eventually lead to the founding of Rome? Neither they nor anyone around them could yet imagine that this family conflict would become the first chapter in the story of one of history's greatest civilizations. The revelation changed everything. For years, Romulus and Remus had believed they were nothing more than shepherds living a simple life along the banks of the Tiber. Now they discovered that their true grandfather was King Numitor, the rightful ruler of Alba Longa, and that the man sitting on the throne, King Amulius, had built his kingdom upon betrayal, murder, and fear. The brothers did not hesitate. According to Roman tradition, they gathered loyal shepherds, farmers, and local supporters who had long grown tired of Amulius's rule. They marched toward Alba Longa, determined not only to avenge their family, but also to restore justice to the kingdom. Ancient writers do not describe the battle in great detail, but they agree on its outcome. Amulius was defeated and killed, ending a reign that had begun with treachery. After reclaiming the throne, Romulus and Remus restored their grandfather, Numitor, as the rightful king of Alba Longa. For many people, this would have been the perfect ending. Their family had been reunited, justice had been served, and the kingdom was once again at peace. But for the twins,
This was only the beginning. Rather than remaining in Alba Longa to enjoy royal privilege, they chose a different path. They returned to the hills near the Tiber River, the very place where fate, or perhaps legend, had spared their lives as infants. It was there that they decided to build an entirely new city, one that would belong not to the past, but to the future. At first, the decision seemed straightforward. Both brothers agreed that a new settlement should rise near the river crossing. The location offered fertile land, natural defenses, and access to important trade routes. Everything pointed toward a prosperous future. But one question remained unanswered. Who would rule it? It was a simple question, yet it carried enormous consequences. Romulus believed the city should be built on the Palatine Hill, where tradition said the basket carrying the twins had come to rest. He argued that its position made it easier to defend and better suited for expansion. Remus favored the Aventine Hill, believing it offered greater advantages and deserved to become the heart of the new settlement. Neither brother was willing to surrender his vision. In the ancient world, major decisions were often believed to require the approval of the gods. To settle the dispute, the brothers turned to a practice known as augury, the interpretation of signs through the flight of birds. Priests and leaders believed that the gods communicated their will by revealing patterns in nature. According to the legend, Remus was the first to spot 6 birds flying overhead and declared himself the chosen leader. Moments later, Romulus claimed to have seen 12 birds, arguing that the greater number proved the gods favored him instead. The problem was obvious. Each brother interpreted the signs differently. Neither accepted defeat. What had begun as a disagreement between brothers slowly transformed into something far darker. Supporters gathered behind each twin, defending the claim of their chosen leader. Pride replaced cooperation. Trust gave way to suspicion. The dream of building a new city was now threatened by the very men who had imagined it. Ancient sources describe several versions of what happened next, but all agree on one heartbreaking fact. The conflict ended in blood.
In one tradition, Remus mocked the walls Romulus had begun constructing around the future city. To prove how weak they were, he leaped over them, laughing at the idea that such defenses could protect anyone. Romulus, overcome with rage, struck his own brother down. Other accounts suggest that one of Romulus's followers delivered the fatal blow instead. The details remain uncertain. The outcome does not. Remus died. For centuries, Roman writers reflected on the tragedy of that moment. The city destined to rule much of the known world was born not in celebration, but in grief. Before Rome conquered distant kingdoms, it had first been divided by conflict within a single family. Standing over the body of his brother, Romulus is said to have declared, "So perish whoever else shall leap over my walls." Whether these exact words were ever spoken is impossible to know. Yet they captured an important Roman belief that the security of the city stood above all else, even personal relationships. Tradition places the founding of Rome on 21 April 753 BC, a date calculated centuries later by Roman scholars and celebrated annually throughout Roman history. While modern archaeology cannot confirm the precise day, excavations on the Palatine Hill have uncovered evidence of small settlements dating to around the 8th century BC, suggesting that a community was indeed emerging there during the period traditionally associated with Rome's founding. This is where legend and archaeology begin to meet. The story of the wolf, the twins, and the divine intervention belongs to Roman tradition. The existence of early villages on the hills overlooking the Tiber belongs to history. Together, they form the foundation of one of humanity's most influential civilizations. Romulus became the city's first king. According to tradition, he organized its earliest government, welcomed newcomers seeking a fresh start, and laid the foundations of institutions that would evolve over the centuries. The settlement was still small, little more than a collection of huts surrounded by simple defenses, but something extraordinary had begun. No one living there could have imagined what the future held. Within a few centuries, this modest settlement would defeat neighboring tribes, challenge powerful kingdoms, and dominate the Italian peninsula. In time, its armies would cross mountains, deserts, and seas. Its laws would shape civilizations. Its language would influence countless others. Its ideas would outlive the empire itself. But every empire has a first step, and Rome had just taken hers. History versus legend. As we conclude this chapter, it is important to separate what we know from what we believe. Modern historians agree that Rome developed gradually from several small Latin settlements on the hills surrounding the Tiber River during the 8th century BC. Archaeological discoveries support the existence of these early communities. However, the stories of Romulus and Remus, the she-wolf, and the intervention of the gods are regarded as founding legends rather than verified historical events. They were preserved by later Roman authors because they expressed the values Romans admired: courage, resilience, destiny, sacrifice, and the belief that greatness often emerges from hardship. Whether Romulus was a real individual, a symbolic figure, or a combination of several early leaders remains one of history's enduring mysteries. Yet sometimes, legends tell us less about what happened
and more about what a civilization believed it was destined to become.